Good morning, students. So today we are going into the third kingdom. So what is the third kingdom? It is kingdom fungi. So in the previous classes we have discussed about kingdom Monera and kingdom Protista. Now we are moving into the next kingdom. What is that kingdom? It is kingdom fungi. Okay. Now moving on to this kingdom fungi characteristics. Okay. The first is your characteristics. Unique kingdom of heterotrophic organism. Heterotrophic means what? You know, they cannot make their own food, they depend on others for their food. I am saying again and again so that you will hear it many a times so that it will get into your head. Okay. And next is they are cosmopolitan in nature. Okay. You can find in most of the places. They grow in warm and humid places. Warm, yes. At the same time water should also be there, somewhat humidity. The air should be saturated with water. So in that places only what you can find this fungi. Example of this is bread mold, orange rot, mushroom, toadstools. White spots on mustard leaves are due to parasitic fungus. So in the diagram you can see the bread mold, it is a fungus growing on the bread. Orange rots, okay, mushroom is a fungus, toadstool is a fungus, white spots which is growing on the mustard leaf is a fungus. So these are all example of what? They are the fungus which is growing on different substratum, different places. Okay. Now, some fungi are source of antibiotics. So, antibiotics, you know what are antibiotics? The medicines produced from useful microorganisms which are used for killing harmful microorganisms. That one we call it as what? Antibiotics. Okay. So, here when you are seeing this fungi, Penicillium notatum, is from that only I am getting an antibiotic. Name of the antibiotic is penicillin. Okay. You have learned this one. So, this penicillin when you are seeing, it is an antibiotic which is prepared from a fungus. Okay, it is very good. Now, it is used for treating diseases, intestinal disorders and all. Some unicellular fungi are there. Yeast, without yeast, bakers and brewers, you cannot imagine they can stay, isn't it? Bakers means the cake industries, they need this one, and thereafter brewers means for making alcohol, for fermentation process in order to produce alcohol. For fermentation, what is needed? This yeast is needed. Even the yeast is more present in the air. You can find when you are keeping any starchy material, the yeast will start growing there. Okay. So the dosa idli batter is because of the fermentation of the yeast. Otherwise, dosa idli is not possible, isn't it? So yeast is a fungi, right? So it is used for making bread. It is used for making beer or any alcoholic drinks. Okay. Other fungi cause disease in plants and animals. Example of it is wheat rust causing Puccinia. Okay, so that is again a disease causing fungi. So diagrams are given, just go through. Now, except yeast, mostly fungi are filamentous. Filamentous means what? They are like filaments. Okay, you can find rod shaped structures. They are like filament. Okay, and these filament, if you are seeing all these. Each and every filament I call it as hyphae. What do I call it? I call it as hyphae. When these filaments are combined together, I call it as mycelium. What do we call it? Mycelium. These hyphae, the filament, can be of two types. So what are the two types? One is cenocytic and another one is septate hyphae. Okay. So what is the cenocytic and septate? Cenocytic hyphae, when you are seeing, they are continuous tubes with many nuclei inside it. And septate means there is partition in it, okay, and the cell wall of this fungi when you are seeing, it is made up of what? It is made up of chitin and polysaccharides, okay. So one by one we will be seeing now. Listen, so what do you mean by the term this one, what is that? Hyphae, that's what we are going to see, okay. So the first thing what we are going to see is the hyphae, clear? So when you are seeing hyphae, how it is? This is hyphae, okay, like this the hyphae is. When all the hyphae combine together, you can find like this, the hyphae are joining together, they are forming a structure. The whole structure we call it as what? We call them as mycelium, right? So individual we call it as hyphae. So one is a hyphae. Now when all these hyphae are combining together, what they are forming? They are forming mycelium. Hope it is clear. Yes. So you have understood what is hyphae and what is mycelium. Now moving on to the next one, what is cenocytic hyphae and what is septate hyphae? Okay. Cenocyte means the hyphae contains nucleus. What is present? The nucleus. Okay, dot 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 structures, dot is not coming in. So nucleus just scattered inside. Okay, so then I call that one as what? Cenocyte. Clear? And when this hyphae is having partitions like this, okay, I call it as what? Septate hyphae. Clear? So now it's clear. Cenocyte hyphae, this one you can find the hyphaes are having many nuclei. Sorry, this one is cenocytic hyphae. Hyphaes are having many nuclei in it. Septate means what? You can find red partition, isn't it? Inside that each compartment you can find one nuclei is present. Okay, so that one we call it as what? Septate hyphae. So this is the characteristic feature of fungi. Fungi, they have hyphae, network of hyphae we call it as mycelium. The hyphae can be a cenocyte like this, or it can be a septate hyphae like this. Cenocyte means the nuclei will be in the just scattered in the hyphae, no partition. In septate there is partition with one nuclei in each. Clear? So that is regarding your other characteristic. Now most fungi are saprophytes. Saprophytes, they depend on dead decaying matter for their food. Okay, and some of the fungi are parasites. Parasites means what? They are going to get into a living organism, take the food from them. Then I call it as what? I call it as parasite. Okay, and some fungi are symbiotic. Symbiotic means both the partners are benefited. Okay, like lichen, you have learned, isn't it? Lichen or lichen you call. It is an association between what? Fungi and algae. Both are living together. So this is lichen. Both the fungi and algae, both are there staying together. What is algae doing? They are preparing the food and giving it to fungi. What is fungi doing? They are taking the water, the nutrients from the soil and giving it to algae to make the food. Now both of them are mutually benefited. They are both are equally benefited. So that sort of association we call it as what? Symbiosis. Symbiotic association. Okay. Another example is mycorrhiza. Okay. Fungi which are present on the roots of higher plants. Mycorrhiza, you can find this is the structure. So these are fungi which are present on the roots of big plants. What is this mycorrhiza doing? These fungi doing? Actually the fungi are helping in dissolving the salts which are present in the soil, absorbing water, converting the the salts into absorbable form, so that they are taking and giving it to whom? This plants. So plant is getting their nutrients, right? Now what is the fungi getting from the plant? When you are seeing the fungi is taking the food. Now in that case also you can find they are helping in what? Absorption of nutrients like sodium, potassium and all the fungi are helping in. And the roots of the plant are benefited, the plant is benefited, indirectly the fungi is also benefited as they are getting the food. So this sort of association we call it as what? Symbiotic association, right? Now moving on to this reproduction in fungi, it can be of three types. So what are the three types of reproduction? One is vegetative propagation, second one is asexual reproduction, and the third one is what? Sexual reproduction. Vegetative, only the parts are involved, okay, the hyphae is involved as such. Now no sexual combination is taking place, no spores are formed, no gametes are involved. In that case we call it as what? Vegetative propagation. Clear? So in vegetative propagation, where and all it is taking place, in what ways it is taking place? It is taking place by fragmentation, fission, budding. Okay, one by one we will see. Asexual reproduction is taking place by the formation of conidia, conidiospores, sporangiospores and zoospores, right? And sexual reproduction is taking place by the formation of oospores, ascospores and basidiospores. Okay, so one by one we will be discussing, right? Now reproduction, vegetative propagation, you can see three: fragmentation, fission, budding is given. What is fragmentation? You can find this is the mycelium, hyphae with the network, mycelium, isn't it? So this mycelium, what is happening is that fragmentation. What is happening? The hyphae is divided into fragments. Now when they are divided into fragments, so here the partition is taking place. You can find how many hyphae are formed? Two hyphae. This will now act as one mycelium and this one will act as another fungi. Clear? So from one I am getting two, just fragments. They are like what is that? You are cutting some fragment and keeping it, a new plant comes out, fragmentation, right? So here also the body parts is being cut into fragments. Each and every fragment is having the capacity to give rise to new organism. So that one we call it as what? Fragmentation. Clear? Now next is your fission. Fission in the yeast. So this is yeast, you can find nuclei is elongating, right? Thereafter the cytoplasm is starting to constrict. Now the cytoplasm constriction deepens and they are divided into 2 cells now, okay. So from one cell I am getting 2 cells, fission, we call it as fission, binary fission. The next is your budding. Budding also you can find one yeast is there, okay. The nucleus has elongated, now the nuclei are divided into 2, okay. So on remaining on the parent, like fission they separate out from the parent, but here what is happening, the buds are remaining attached to the parent for some time, getting nourishment from them. So you can find one nuclei is moving towards the constriction, where it has gone here. Now the wall is slowly constricting, you can find a bud is formed. So here a bud is formed. So from 1 again I am getting 2, again that small bud will grow, nuclei will elongate, nuclei will divide into 2, constriction will be there, and again one small bud will be formed. So like this budding is taking place where in yeast. So these are the 3 ways by which vegetative propagation takes place in case of fungi, right. So next is regarding asexual reproduction. The asexual reproduction is taking place with the help of some structures called spores. Based on the type of fungi, the spores will be having different names, okay. So what are the different names? One is conidia spores, another one is your sporangiospores, other one is what? The zoospores, okay. So conidiospores, when you are saying the conidiospores will be like this, the structure will be left somewhat like this. Sporangiospores are having structures like this, and the zoospores are having structures like this, okay. So this is the different types. Now zoospores, when you are saying to some extent they are motile in nature. Motile means what? They can move, they are having flagellum to move, okay. So the conidia, sporangiospores and zoospores are the different types of spores which are formed, and these spores are helping in propagation. Propagation means giving rise to young ones, okay, giving rise to the new fungi they are helping. How they are helping? Like Sima, how it is done. Now the spores are formed, isn't it? What will happen to the spores? The spores will be falling down. Where it is going to fall down? It is going to fall down. Now from the spores what will come out? Hyphae will come out. They will start multiplying, hyphae will come. Hyphae will give rise to what? Again they will be giving rise to sporangia. Mycelium. What they will be giving rise to? Mycelium. Some of the mycelium will grow vertically long, okay. So after going vertically long, what they are going to give rise? Again they will give rise to a sac like structure. The sac like structure we call it as what? The sporangiosac, okay. So the spore sac, we call this one as the spore sac, and the nuclei which were present over here, the nucleus will be moving over here in this here, and there they will be producing, these nucleus will get surrounded by cytoplasm, then they will synthesize a cell wall and they will be converted into spores. And when they are mature enough, what will happen? The spore sac will break, okay. So after breaking, the spores will be fallen down. If again it is getting a new substratum, a good place, so what will happen? Again they will be giving rise to hyphae, hyphae to mycelium, mycelium to sporangium, isn't it? So thereafter you can find sporangiospores are again formed. So like that conidiospores are formed, zoospores are formed, and by this method here only from one parent only it is produced, isn't it? That's why it is called as what? Asexual reproduction, okay. So asexual reproduction is taking place by structures called as conidia, sporangiospores and zoospores. Now moving on to sexual reproduction, names are different, 2 parents are involved, right. So one is oospore, ascospore, decidiospores. So they are produced in distinct structures, they are having a particular structures. Those structures we call it as a fruiting body. What do we call them? Fruiting body. So on that fruiting body only these male gametes, female gametes, the sexual reproduction is going to take place, okay. So the sexual structures are present, fruiting body is present, fruits, this sexual part, isn't it? So there only what is going to take place? The fusion is going to take place, clear? So this is regarding your what? Sexual reproduction. How? Listen. First, listen, this is one hyphae, the other one is the other hyphae. So this is one hyphae and another one is the other hyphae. One I am writing it as plus and another one I am writing it as minus, just to differentiate. One is having some protein, that's why it is plus, and another is not having that protein in it, that's why it is minus. No botheration, you just know that different strains, they are different strains, 2 different strains, 2 parents are there, okay. So this is one hyphae is plus and another hyphae is minus. So you can find here one hyphae, one arrow is plus and another arrow is what? Minus, right? So one hyphae, other hyphae. Now what is happening? This hyphae and this hyphae are fusing together. What is happening to these two hyphaes? They are fusing together. So that was one hyphae and this one was another hyphae. Now what is happening? These two hyphaes are fusing together. Okay. After fusing together, they are converted into one single hyphae. Now they are fusing together, which means their protoplasm. Protoplasm means what? The content, the living content in the cells are all fused together. Okay. So this fusion of the protoplasm, we call it as plasmogamy. What do we call them? Plasmogamy. Okay. So fusion of the protoplast, we call it as what? The plasmogamy, right? So what is happening here? So both are fusing together, right? Now what is happening after this plasmogamy? Heterokaryotic. Heterokaryotic, why? See, this is heterokaryotic because it is not only having the nucleus of the content of this one hyphae, they are having a mixed content, both two different strains, isn't it? They are fusing. So that's why it is not homo, it's not single, it's heterokaryotic. Here different nucleus are present. Fusion between two different nucleus is going to take place. So that's why we call it as what? Heterokaryotic, right? So heterokaryotic. So what is happening? The nuclei of one is fusing with the nuclei of the other. This one we call it as what? We call this one as karyogamy. So first, what fusion has taken place? The first fusion what have taken place was of, the first fusion that has taken place was of the hyphae. Now who is going to fuse? The nucleus from here as well as the nucleus from the other one which came, both are going to fuse and they are going to form one nuclei. This fusion we call it as what? This one we are going to call it as karyogamy. What do you call it? Karyogamy. So first the protoplasm has fused content, then the nucleus have fused. Karyogamy. Okay. So first plasmogamy followed by karyogamy has taken place. So you can find two hyphae or this hyphae is fused together, plasmogamy. The protoplasm has fused together, plasmogamy, then karyogamy, right? Now then the nucleus has formed, so one is male and another one is female, you know, in case of sexual reproduction, male gamete, female gamete, here different strains, plus and minus. So when the male gamete is fusing with the female gamete, one cell will be formed. What do we call them? We call it as zygote. The same here also we are going to call it as zygote. It is formed with the fusion of two different hyphae, isn't it? That's why we call it as what? We call it as zygote. This zygote will undergo meiosis. So what is meiosis? There are two types of division you have learned, isn't it? One is mitosis and another one is what? Meiosis. So what is this mitosis and meiosis when you are seeing? In mitosis, like one zygote is dividing and forming a cluster of cell and all the cells are similar. Then we call it as what? The growth, what is taking place. I was formed, only one zygote was present, right? So when the zygote is going on dividing and now I am growing or whatever, the metabolism is taking place because of what? It is because of the cellular division. Growth is taking place, replacement is taking place, repair is taking place. So these are all caused by the simple cellular division in which no variations are there. So that simple cellular division we call it as what? The mitotic division, right? So growth from one cell, two cells are formed just like that. But in the sex organs, the revision what is taking place is what? It is meiosis. Formation of male gamete and female gamete. Formation of egg and sperm. That one be the process. That reproductive phase. So that division we call it as what? We call it as meiosis. So the zygote is undergoing meiosis. So after the zygote is formed, what is the zygote going to do? They are undergoing meiosis. Now when meiosis are formed, what is produced? The spores are produced. What are produced? Spores. We call it as gamete, male gamete and female gamete. Here we are giving the name what? We are going to call it as spores. Clear? So these spores again are means giving rise to a male plus or minus strains. Okay. So like this what is taking place? Sexual reproduction, right? I will repeat once more. So two hyphae, one plus and another one minus, they are coming together, they are fusing together. Fusion of protoplasm we call it as what? We call that one as plasmogamy. The nucleus are fused, we call it as karyogamy. The fused nucleus, when you are seeing, it's called as what? Heterokaryon, because it is a combination of two nucleus, two different hyphae. This fused nucleus is turning into a zygote. The zygote is undergoing meiosis, and after this meiosis, what is formed? The spores are formed, and the spores are going to give rise to a new fungi, right? So this type of reproduction we call it as what? Sexual reproduction, as two parents are involved. Clear? Yeah. So reproduction in ascomycetes and basidiomycetes, a dikaryotic stage or dikaryotic phase occurs. Such a condition is called as dicaryon. Later, parental nuclei fuse and the cell becomes diploid. Now listen, ma. What is dikaryon is the thing which you have to learn. So what is dikaryon? Dikaryon means, I told you what is dikaryon. So when you are seeing the dikaryon, this is one hyphae and two hyphae fused together. One hyphae from here, as well as one nucleus from here, this hyphae, and one nucleus from the other hyphae has come close contact. Okay, they are not fusing. Okay, for the time being they are lying side by side without fusion. What is not happening? Fusion is not happening. So in some fungi, immediately the fusion doesn't occur. The two hyphae which has fused, the nuclei of these two hyphae, they remain side by side. They do not fuse. Okay. In that case, I call that stage as what? Dikaryon. Dikaryon. How many? Karyon means nucleus. Okay. So how many nucleus are there? Two nucleus. One from plus strain and another one from minus. You can find the two nucleus are present. So that stage we call it as what? We call them as dikaryon. This dikaryon stage will be there for some time. Later what will happen? These parent nuclei will fuse. Okay. So all of a sudden it is not fusing. Some all of a sudden it fuse. Some there is a dikaryotic stage. They will be fusing later. Okay. So that one we call as what? The dikaryon. Understood what is dikaryon? So when the fusion is taking place, the nucleus are immediately not fusing. They are lying side by side. So if it is there is septate, you can find how septate hyphae. You can find what? The two nuclei will be lying side by side. Now how many nuclei are there in this inside the cell? You can find there is two nuclei. This two nuclear stage we call it as what? Dikaryon. Later what will happen? These two nuclei will fuse and form the zygote, and the zygote will undergo meiosis, form spores. Okay. So like that the process will be going on. Clear? So this is regarding your dikaryon. Now moving on to the classification of fungi. Fungi can be classified into four types. What are they? Phycomycetes, ascomycetes, basidiomycetes and deuteromycetes. Okay. One by one we are going to discuss. Common, all the characteristics we have discussed. So this one specifically one classes of fungi. What are the characteristics they are possessing? Okay. So the first one is Phycomycetes, lower fungi. So Phycomycetes, when you are seeing, they occur in aquatic habitat, water bodies, or on the decaying wood in moist places where there is logs of wood and all are present, damp places and all. Okay, so there you can find they are present, or else they occur as obligate parasites. Obligate parasites means in order to complete their life cycle, they want to stay for some time on a living host, on the living organism. They go, stay, complete a part of the life cycle, and then again they multiply. Okay, so like plants, they go and attack what? The plants. As a parasite, they get nutrition from the plants in order to complete its life cycle. Then I call it as what? Obligate parasites. So some are aquatic habitat, some are on decaying organism, some are parasitic in nature. And the mycelium is aseptate. What do you mean by the term aseptate? Aseptate means you cannot find partition. Partition is not there. What is not there? Partition is not there. Then I call that one as what? I call that one as aseptate. Clear? Cenocytic, you know, many nuclei will be present just like that without any separation. Right. Example of this as Phycomycetes is Mucor, Rhizopus, Albugo. You can find the diagrams have been given. Right, just go through. Now, Phycomycetes, they are undergoing asexual reproduction. Okay, by forming what? Motile zoospores. They are forming what? Zoospores. Clear? Or if it is non-motile in nature, asexual reproduction is taking place by another spores called as what? Aplanospores. Just learn the names. So either by zoospores motile or by non-motile aplanospores, this asexual reproduction is taking place, and where the spores are produced, it is produced in sporangium. So it is sporangiospores. Okay. And sexual reproduction, when you are seeing how it is taking place, the two hyphae you can see, the two hyphae, isn't it? So these two hyphae, one plus another one minus, they are coming. Okay. Now what is happening? Protoplasm. So some part of it is being detached from this part, as well as some part of this minus is detached. You can find the protoplasm is fused. Thereafter the nucleus is also getting fused, and from there you can find a new structure is coming out, and they are going to give rise to what? Undergo meiosis, and they will be giving rise to spores. Okay. So this type of reproduction we call it as what? The sexual reproduction. Clear? Now this fusion of two gametes, they are forming what? They are forming zygospores. When they are fusing together, this one they are forming what? Zygospores. And gametes are isogamous. Isogamous means they are somewhat, most of the gametes are somewhat similar. Similar means what? This one, two gametes looking, the plus as well as the minus strains, this one plus as well as the minus are somewhat looking similar to one another. Then it is called as isogamy. What do we call them? Isogamy. Anisogamous or oogamous means what? They are different. They are different. Different means what? They are not similar. The plus is somewhat resembling, not resembling like the minus. They are somewhat different in their shape. Then we call it as what? Anisogamous. Okay. So that is regarding your sexual reproduction. Moving on to the next, ascomycetes. Phycomycetes over, ascomycetes. Unicellular like yeast is coming under ascomycetes. Multicellular like penicillium is coming under ascomycetes. So this is penicillium and this one is yeast. Okay. So they are saprophytic, means they depend on dead decaying matter, mostly decomposes, or they can be parasitic, or you can find they are growing on the dungs of animals. Okay. So that name we are having, coprophilous is the name for the mode of nutrition where the microbes take nutrition from what? The dung. Clear? Dung, sorry. Now by conidia. So conidia, when you are saying this is conidia. Conidiospore is the type of asexual reproduction which is taking place in ascomycetes, and this conidia again when they are falling down they will give rise to hyphae, mycelium, and again the process will continue. Okay. So this conidia, when you are seeing, they are produced exogenously. What do you mean by the term exogenously? Not inside, they are produced outside. Okay. So what is exogenously? That is important. So you see this conidia which is coming out, if the spores are formed outside like this, then it is the main structure, but the spores are produced outside, outer to it, exogenously. When the spores are produced, like for example this is a sac like structure and the spores are produced inside, okay, the sac, then it is called as endogenously. What do we call? Endogenously. If the spores are produced on the external surface, okay, they are forming and moving out, then we call it as what? Exogenously. Spores are produced inside the fruiting body, then we call it as what? We call it as endogenously. Clear? So that one you have to make a note. Okay. So conidiospores are formed exogenously. Ascomycetes. So ascus is the structure. Ascospores produce endogenously. So here where is the meiosis taking place? It is taking place in a sac like structure. You can find ascus. What do we call them? Ascus. Okay. So in this ascus, so you can find which one is ascus. This structures are present. Now these structures we call it as the axis, and in that only what is produced? The spores are produced. Okay. So that's why the name is called as what? Ascomycetes. And how it is produced? Endogenously. I told you inside it is produced. Okay. So this is the structure of the fruiting body. Fruiting body, ascocarp. So the asci are arranged to form what? Ascocarp. Clear? So these asci are arranged and this is the ascocarp. And these ascocarp are producing what? Ascospores. And the spores are produced by sexual reproduction undergoing meiosis, and they are produced endogenously inside the sac. Okay. So that is regarding ascomycetes. Example is Aspergillus, Claviceps, Neurospora. Neurospora is used in for biochemical and genetic work research field. We are using them. Morels, truffles are edible. We are having it, the fungi like mushrooms and all. we have it. So morels, truffles and all are edible fungi which can be used as a food ingredient. Okay. So that is regarding Ascomycetes. Now we are moving on to Basidiomycetes. So what and all it includes? It includes mushroom, bracket fungi and puffballs. You can see mushroom, bracket fungi and puffballs. It will be like this. They grow on soil, on logs of wood, tree stumps and all you can find, or in the living bodies also, in the plants and all, living plant bodies they will be staying in the form of what? Parasites. Okay. Example, ruts, smuts, diseases they are causing. Mycelium is branched. Branched means you know, yeah, so it is branched, and it is septate, means there is a septum with one nuclei in each septum. So that is regarding the mycelium of what? This Basidiomycetes. Now asexual reproduction, spores are generally not formed, they are not forming, and they undergo vegetative propagation by fragmentation. Sex organs are absent, but you can find plasmogamy. What is plasmogamy? Fusion of protoplasm. Two vegetative cells will fuse, or the two body cells will fuse. Sex cells are not involved. Okay. Of different strains or genotypes are fusing together. The resulting structure, the fused structure, what do we call? I told you. After the fusion is taking place, we call it as Dicarryon. Okay. And this is going to give rise to Basidium. So this is Basidium. So fusion is taking place of two different strains. Plasmogamy followed by karyogamy. Before karyogamy, you can find the two karyon stages present. Two nuclei side by side. After some time, they will fuse and form zygote. This zygote will undergo meiosis, and they will be giving rise to spores. So basidiospores. What is this spore called? Basidiospores. So this structure, the club-like structure, what you can find, that one we call it as what? We call it as basidium. Clear? Yeah. Now Basidiomycetes, karyogamy, meiosis occurs in basidium. I told you it is occurring where? In the basidium, right? So basidia are arranged in fluting body called as basidiocarp. So this one is what? The basidiocarp. Example of Basidiomycetes is agaricus, thereafter Ustilago and Puccinia are example for what? Basidiomycetes. Now Deuteromycetes, commonly known as imperfect fungi, because only their asexual or vegetative cell is means part we know, their sexual reproduction is not known. So that's why we call it as imperfect fungi. Okay, we cannot give it as a correct definition, correct characteristics we cannot predict, because they are not undergoing what? Sexual reproduction. So when these fungi, when it is noted that whenever we are finding that they are not having sexual organs not functioning properly, that we used to put them in what? This Deuteromycetes. And in this, after putting it there in the Deuteromycetes, if I am finding out that sexual reproduction is taking place, then I will be learning whether it is a Basidium or it is an Ascus. Then I will be taking them and putting in Phygomycetes or Ascomycetes or Basidiomycetes. After that only, till I cannot discover the sexual stage, it will be put under which the fungi will be put under Deuteromycetes. Okay. So it is also possible that the asexual and vegetative stage has been given one name placing under Deuteromycetes, and the sexual stage another name placing under other class. When the linkage were established, the fungi were correctly identified and moved out of Deuteromycetes. Okay. So when you first get it, if you cannot identify sexual reproduction is not taking place, sexual combination is not taking place, Deuteromycetes. When we find out that whether they are producing some meiosis and all is taking place, then we will learn whether it is resembling characteristics of Phygomycetes sexual characteristics or Basidiomycetes or Ascomycetes. Then we will move them from this group and put them in the other groups. Okay. So that is regarding Deuteromycetes. Deuteromycetes reproduce only by asexual spores, conidiospores. Mycelium is septate, I told you, branched, yeah. Saprophytic, dead decaying matter. Parasites, living hosts they are taking food from. Majority are decomposers. Decomposers means they depend on dead decaying matters, saprophytics. Example, Alternaria, Colitotrichum and Trichoderma are example of what? Deuteromycetes. Next we are moving on to the last part of the chapter, the viruses, viroids, prions and lichens. Okay. Now moving on to the first one, the virus. Okay. So virus, they are not mentioned in 5 kingdom classification. Why? Because these virus or viroids or prions or non-cellular, they are not having cellular structure, and outside living organisms you cannot find they are resembling any living characteristics, they do not possess. That is why they are put into that group, not truly living. Outside they are non-living, when they get into a body of a host they become living. That is why they are put into a different category. Okay. So, they are not included where in the 5 kingdom classification. Clear? Now, moving on to the next one, viruses, they have inert crystalline structure like sugar crystal, they are having somewhat like the structures. Outside the living cells, when you are seeing like sugar crystals, you have powders, you have like that somewhat structure will be. They are obligate parasites. Obligate means what? In order to survive, in order to live, okay, they want a living host. Only after they get into a living host, they turn living. They take over the mechanism of the cell. So, this is my cell. Now, the virus has entered my cell means now my nucleus will not control my cell. Who is going to control? The virus is now going to control my cell. So, that is why we call it as what? The obligate parasites. They want to complete their life cycle. They want a living organism for surviving. Okay. Outside they are non-living in nature, crystal like. Okay. When they infect a cell, they take over the machinery of the host cell and then they start multiplying and spread throughout the body. Sometimes this virus, if it starts spreading in huge amount and it has been not controlled, it can be even fatal. Fatal means what? It can even cause death. Okay. That is what viruses the name was given by whom? Louis Pasteur gave the name what? Virus. What is the name of the, means why he has given the name virus? Because the meaning of virus is what? It is venom. Venom means what? Snake's venom here, poisonous. Some poisonous fluid secreted by these viruses after getting into the cells, which can kill the host. That is why the name is given as what? It has been given as virus. Now, D.J. Ivanovsky discovered virus. He recognized certain microbes that can cause mosaic disease in tobacco. Mosaic disease, you can see this one is what? The mosaic disease in tobacco. They were smaller than bacteria. They were much smaller than bacteria, because when these powders were taken and it was passed through a bacterial filter paper where bacteria cannot pass. Okay. So, bacteria proof filters. So, what happened is that bacteria cannot pass, but these viruses could pass because they were smaller than bacteria. That is why it couldn't be trapped where? In the trap which was made for bacteria. So, that is why it was concluded that they are smaller than what? The bacteria, right. Now, M.W. Bejernik demonstrated that the extract of the infected plants of tobacco can cause infection on the healthy plants. Means this tobacco powder which was taken and it was dropped over the other healthy plants, that plants were also getting attacked. They started suffering from that disease. So, it is contagious. Contagious means what? It spreads from one person to another very fastly. It spreads from one plant to another very fastly. Okay. So, that fluid, because they are producing something because of which only it is spreading from one person to another. Okay. So, demonstrated the extract of infected plants of tobacco could cause infection in what? Healthy plants. And that thing what he had discovered, he gave the name, the fluid the name was Contagium vibun fluidum, which means infectious living fluid. Viruses was given the name infectious living fluid. Okay. And W.M. Stanley showed that viruses could be crystallized and crystals consist largely of proteins. So, viruses you can make it as crystal and can preserve it, and this crystals when you are learning the chemical structure, it is somewhat having protein like characteristics, right. Now, virus is a nucleoprotein. Okay. It is having a nucleus as well as a protein content in it. It has a protein coat. You can find the protein coat, this outer covering. Okay. So, that protein coat and inside a genetic material. So, the red one is what? The genetic material. This genetic material can be RNA or it can be DNA. Okay. No viruses contain both RNA and DNA. In one you can not find both RNA is also present, DNA. Either it will have RNA or it will have DNA. and the genetic material is infectious. This genetic material is very, very infectious. If it is moving into my body, my cells in which it is going, my nucleus will not function. They will take over my mechanism. Okay. So that is important characteristics. Next, generally viruses that infect plants have a single stranded RNA. Only one strand of RNA is present there in plants, the viruses which are attacking plants. Viruses that infect animals have either single or double stranded RNA. Either they are having single stranded RNA or they are having what? Double stranded RNA, or they are having double stranded DNA. Okay. So like us, we are having double stranded DNA. Viruses can also have double stranded DNA which are attacking us. Okay. Bacteriophage. So this is bacteriophage, a virus that is attacking bacteria. They are having what? Double stranded DNA. Clear? Now moving on to viruses, the protein coat, that is, we call it as capsid. What do we call them? Capsid, made up of small subunit. You can find the small round subunits. Those subunits we call it as what? Capsomeres. Okay. So this is protecting the inside the nucleic part. Capsomeres are arranged in helical or polyhedral geometric. Helical, this is helical, like this, or like polyhedral structure they will be arranged. It will be present like crystal form outside. Viruses cause diseases like, example I have given, mumps, smallpox, herpes, influenza, AIDS. In plants it is causing mosaic formation, leaf is rolling out, curling, yellowing, veins are losing their, vein clearing means what? Veins are losing the green color, turning yellow, dwarf, plant is not growing, it is short growth, they are not growing much, stunted growth. Okay. So these are characteristics, a feature of virus which are causing different diseases in plants and animals. These are some of the examples of viruses. Diagrams has been given. Now viroids. So what is viroids? Viroids are more smaller than virus. Okay, it is an infectious, only infectious, and with a free low molecular weight. They are having what? Very low molecular weight RNA. RNA of this viroids is more, weight is very, very less compared to what? The virus, and they do not have capsid. Protein coat is not present. That's why it is given another name, viroids. Okay. So RNA is present and they do not have what? A protein coat. Like virus have a protein coat, here viroids do not have a protein coat. They are smaller than viruses. It was discovered by T.O. Diener. He found that it is causing a disease. Name of the disease is potato spindle tuber disease. So this is potato spindle tuber disease. So this is a disease which is caused in plants by a viroid. Okay, who is causing it? Viroid. Okay. Now prion. So what is prions? Prions, it is, our body are having many proteins, but some proteins are somewhat abnormally molded, means they are taking some different structure which is like an antigen. Antigen means what? We cannot recognize what sort of material it is. Okay. So abnormal folded proteins, sometimes when you see, my cells and all start detecting it in a different manner, and when my cells starts responding, it can cause some of diseases. Consider it as an antigen, my cells can respond in some other way. So in that case, they are causing some diseases which are mostly related to nervous system. So neurological diseases are caused by these abnormally folded proteins. We call them as what? We call them as what? We call it as prions. Okay. They are similar in size to viruses. They cause bovine spongiform encephalopathy. So that is, or mad cow disease, which is caused in cow. Obvious, mad cow disease, as the name suggests, its nervous system is not functioning properly. Okay, like in case of humans, it is causing Jacob disease, CJD we call. So this Jacob disease, when you are seeing, what is happening is that person is becoming mentally retarded. It is leading to depression. The personality of the person is totally changing out. Can be caused by this prion. So it is again a non-living substance, somewhat misfolded protein like structure, which is going to cause disease, right? Newly discovered that one. So we are moving on to the last part, lichens. Lichens is a symbiotic association between an algae and a fungi. We have already discussed algae and fungi association. In this, the algal part is autotrophic because they can prepare their food. Fungal part is what? The heterotrophic. Algal part is called as phycobiont and the fungal part is called as what? Mycobiont. Okay. Algae, they can prepare their own food. So, after preparing, they are sharing it with the fungi. Fungi, what it is doing for making the food, the water, nutrients, they are collecting and giving it to algae. So, both are mutually benefited, symbiotic. And lichens are very good pollution indicators. Okay, where there is pollution, you cannot find the lichens are present. Lichens do not grow in polluted areas. Lichens don't prefer to grow in polluted area. So, if a lichen is growing in some place, means that place is very good pollution free place. So, that place is a peaceful place. Okay, a pollution free place we can understand. So, with this we all are coming to the end of the second chapter. Hope you would have understood the chapter. Stay home, stay safe. Thank you.